basically a mirror of what we had before. They do go for the Kestrel ban, however, so it leaves Baron open, and then they would have a very similar team comp to what the side of Brenchong had before with the Catherine Baron. Obviously, they finished off with a Celeste, and they do happen to pick up at Celeste. Baron's still on the table. Whether they, if they don't pick it up here, I don't see why Silver Boom wouldn't try the same strategy. Perhaps maybe their carry isn't comfortable on Baron, but I think most carries these days have definitely been playing a lot of Baron in the top tier of Vainglory, so I won't be surprised. Do you think the Baron would work out with the team comp on the side of Brenchong so far, however? I mean, just because they have the Lyra pickup.
Well, I personally think so. Baron does well. Baron is one of those heroes where you can just pick it. If you play him half decent, you can kind of win games with him. So honestly, whatever team comp that you go for, as long as you provide that little support for Baron, you generally would win, provided you're a half decent Baron that knows your macros and know how to position yourself well. They are going to go for that glaive being glaive. So early on, I wanted to say though, if you are going to say whether or not the side of Silver Boom will pick up on the Baron, it's likely, but the fact is that Idris is still open and Idris counters Baron big time. We've seen that happen before. They are going to go for the glaive and black feather, just a preemptive, just to make sure, presume and assume that the Baron will be picked up for the side of Team Silver Boom.
Well, I think Glaive and Black Feather. I always have a problem with doing those kind of things, don't I? But Glaive and Black Feather have some very good synergy with the Lyra. However, it's going to be the question whether Lyra has enough heal for the both of them. It is really going to have to be which target you go for. And here's something new. Adagio is... what is up with Silver Boom and wanting to just bring kind of not meta picks into this?
Weapon Adagio has been meta, quote-unquote meta-ish, in the Southeast Asia region for 2.6 patch. They generally go the same build as that of Fox. They have the Poison Shift, they have the Tension Bow, and then they go for the Breaking Point. And then, so I'm expecting a Weapon Adagio coming up from the side of Silver Boom. If that's the case, then I personally think if Celeste can carry them in the late game when Celeste hits 8, then the side of Silver Boom will have a stronger team comp because they have the CC, they have the zoning from Celeste, and of course from Adagio. And if you leave Adagio unchecked, we saw, like Minnie and I saw the amount of damage that Adagio can output in the early game. Even into the late game, if you leave him unchecked. Problem with a Weapon Adagio is that on the side of Brenchong, we do see Glaive, who can disposition Weapon and Adagio, or even a Celeste. And then, of course, we have that of Black Feather that can dive in for that Celeste or even Adagio as well. So, and of course, on top of that, we have the sustain coming out from Lyra. And that would be difficult. I personally think the easier team comp to execute would be that of Brenchong. The more, if the side of Silver Boom can actually, execute the team comp, then of course, they are good with that Weapon Adagio. It might be their secret weapon. Oh, Lei Kang is playing. So Lei Kang is a good laner. I mean, we've seen, if I'm not wrong, in the Challenger series, I think, Challenger battles, we did see Lei Kang come up on this Weapon Adagio, and it worked really, really well for them. And Lei Kang on this Weapon Adagio, he almost plays it so much. He kind of knows the limitations of where, how far he can push his Adagio to. So I'm quite excited to see, because if it's who's the other player before Lei Kang? Rasen Shuriken. If it's Rasen Shuriken on this lane Adagio, Weapon Adagio, then I'm not too sure. But Lei Kang on this Weapon Adagio has shown quite outstanding plays as well. So I'm looking forward as well. I'm really looking forward.
Okay, well, we'll have to see how this second matchup between Brenchong and Silver Boom go as they load onto the fold. And Yeah, I don't know. I would have to say where Brenchon's team does fall out is the fact that they have no range. But then you look over at the side of Silver Boom and they only have range. They, you know, in terms of damage, because the Catherine will be a melee hero. But you have that CC there between the Celeste and the Catherine. That might work out for them. I'm just wondering how well and how much effect this Adagio can do. And it's kind of a question we brought up in the previous matchup of like how much effect could the pedal do. So we're seeing a similar situation here, and there's going to be a 3v3 kind of just scrap in this start of the match here. Cincy one is going to fall. They managed to get that mid camp, but it's not really going to be worth it when some of your farm gets stolen away, and the first kill, that's worth 300 gold, I believe.
Yep.
Goes over to the side of Silver Boom. So you can see a very aggressive rotation. They should be careful, however, though, not to extend it too far. They do have Adagio. So, you know, in that sense, they have a bit more sustainability, but they need to be careful to not get caught out, and they're just going to rotate up to lane. Meanwhile, Mr. Jim made his way to the enemy backs, and it's going to be up to clear those out. Likewise, Celeste, however, clearing out the jungle of Mr. Jim. And it looks like that trade's going to actually go in favor of So Bad Very Bad because of the fact that they managed to clear out half of the jungle. Meanwhile, Glaive only took the backs and then backed out. There's going to be the core collapse onto Majin. There's the auto attack, but it's not quite enough. C1 also fairly low in this situation. Majin's not going to be there to heal them. They did go back to base instead, but Mr. Jim, noticing that, does rotate up to the lane to help out, which, I mean, probably the best thing he can do right now, considering that most of his jungle was stolen, whether he knows that or not.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not he knows that, So Bad Very Bad on his Celeste, he seems really comfortable as well, picking up the first kill. She has got extra gold. I reckon she should go back and shop at this point in time after clearing out this current jungle. At least, we do see Lei Kang, though, putting up a lot of poke against this Glaive in lane, although Glaive has got a sustain from the Book of Eulogies. But then, again, Lei Kang just is so very comfortable on this Adagio, just being able to stand across, you know, the mid line of the lane and just dishing out poke after poke. I mean, we saw the amount of damage, rather not the amount of damage, the amount of poke that he can output in lane onto the Glaive in the early game.
And we see now a bit of trade coming out here in the lane. All three members of each team are up there and ready to fight. So wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be an engage, possibly off the side of Brenchong's on that Glaive. He does have the afterburn up, but it's about looking for the right opportunity to go in. You don't want to go in and get locked down straight away. But it is kind of a tough one here as they decide to hold off the lane. And it's actually Cincy one going into the jungle now and clearing that one up. So am I wrong? Is it Cincy one that's the jungle, or are they just trying to get Cincy one,
Sync 1 is the jungler. Sync 1 is the jungler. Sync 1 just held lane for a little bit for Mr. Jim when Mr. Jim was TPing back.
In that earlier game. But you see, it's very tough for the side of Boom to push through. They do have the Celeste to put the Heliogenesis down, which will help them. But Majin, as long as Majin's up in the lane on that Lyra, will have the Imperial Sigil to keep them there. So, you know, it's tough for them right now, but as soon as Celeste hits that level 8, I can definitely see the side of Silver Boom having just a bit more of an advantage if Brenchong don't play this a bit more aggressively.
Well, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be forced back just because of one kill. I mean, just looking at the side, ooh.
We see Mr. Jim going in with the afterburn, and they're now going to turn their attention to Adagio, but there's a Solar Storm coming out and actually helps them pick up a kill onto that, onto the Glaive. Meanwhile, Black Feather able to pick up a kill onto Adagio. So a bit of a trade out there, and you can see that if Brenchong just push their advantage, well, I wouldn't call it advantage, but, you know, utilize the team comp they have. They have a dive team comp for a reason. So they need to use that. Otherwise, they're going to fall behind into this late game. or into the mid game, I should say.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, as with all Adagio, crystal or weapon, you kind of fall backwards in the late game, and that is really just a problem for Adagios in general. But if you can actually just snowball and then bring late game into the early game when your enemies are still in the mid game, then you probably could have that advantage. I mean, a damage advantage over the opponent's carries. I mean, Lei Kang is sitting on very good CS at this point in time, like 53 CS as compared to Mr. Jim's 38 CS. And then you look over to Sync 1. Sync 1 has got 28 CS as compared to So Bad, Very Bad on that Celeste with 38 CS. So, you know, CS-wise, you kind of win, and it's kind of it's translated into goal difference as well. The side of Silverboom not having taken any objectives is sitting at a comfortable 1,000 early game, going up against the side of Brenchong.
Yeah, and I think that slight lead will help them, and it's why I said that if the side of Brenchong don't do anything about it, is going to get out of hand into the mid game, especially when Celeste reaches that power spike. And you can see them trying to position themselves up in this lane, since C1 being up there a fair amount, deciding to be there instead of being as backs right now. So they want to put the pressure down, and you can tell they have that idea. They're just being a bit cautious and maybe a bit too passive.
Definitely, but then we do see Lei Kang as well picking up that poison shift, and then already going into the tension bow. And as for Mr. Jim only has got a tension bow and not any other tier 3 item. He has got his infusion in the pocket, but then just looking at CS-wise, Lei Kang is just doing so much better as compared to the side of Mr. Jim. And one more thing that's going for the side of Silverboom is that they just have got better siege potential as compared to the side of Brenchong as well.
Yeah, well, we kind of talked about this earlier, at least I touched on it, on the fact that we're looking at Brenchong, who is an all melee team going up against the range on the side of Silverboom. So they have that poke potential, and that's why Brenchong really needs to rely on their engage. And you see Mr. Jim using the boots there, but not following through with it. Maybe just going to try look for a better opportunity, but there might not be one because Silverboom is able to keep them at range and at distance. So it also translates into the farm, the fact that Lei Kang would have the advantage being on this Adagio. There's going to be the afterburn, but no real follow-through there. And Mr. Jim actually the one to take more damage in that situation, followed by the Solar Storm, is almost going to die, but luckily Martian there is going to have the Imperial Sigil to keep him alive for just a second longer. And they're going to kind of have to back out of this one. I won't be surprised if Silverboom continue to put the pressure on this turret, however, because they do have the damage to do so. They might look for it, and they're not going to quite get it, because they still need to be careful of this Black Feather. And you see Pain Sandy there able to mostly pursue and stun out since he won, but there's going to be the Mr. Jim coming up on the glaive with the afterburn and able to turn that one around. And they might have got a bit greedy going for that turret, because it could be a turret loss now.
Well, I mean, Celeste can clear lane really, really fast as well, so I'm not... the turret, both turrets are actually quite low. Ooh.
Damage coming out from Mr. Jim there with the tension bow, and that's basically it. Tension bow, heavy steel, and he was just able to clean that Celeste up, because Celeste only at this point with a reflex block. And you can see the turret now being traded over to the side of Brenchong, but Lei Kang not going to fall so easily, managed to take Black Feather down with him, and almost Mr. Jim if he didn't run away there. Pain Sandy gonna try follow through with that one. Mr. Jim doesn't have the afterburn just yet, does get caught up by a scout trap, but luckily not the Solar Storm, and it's going to try and make his way around. He doesn't have energy for it, but I think he should be able to get out of this one.
Yeah, Lei Kang did manage to pick up a return turret for themselves and for the team, and with that going for that gold mine as well. I mean, with that return turret, they put themselves 1k ahead of the enemy's team again, right? So they were sitting 1k ahead just based on farm, and then now they are back 1k ahead again. And they did not have to specifically take the turret in the early games. All they really had to do was just remove farm and deprive the enemies of farm. And And we do see Lei Kang just going into that breaking point at this point in time. And like I said early on, all Silver Boom had to do is just bring late game into mid, so then they strive better because you have the Celeste, and of course you have Adagio that falls off in the late game, but in the mid game, especially a weapon Adagio, he is still relatively strong. So with this and with all the items that Lei Kang is going to be building, he will have a lot of sustained damage going up against the side of Brenchong. And whether or not Brenchong would have an answer to that is down to this fight.
Yeah, as we see Glaive getting taken down so low instantly, and you really see the Adagio paying off, but Adagio needs to be careful because he almost gets taken out by Black Feather, but it's going to be Martian to deal the final blow. Martian, however, going to fall so bad, very bad, because no one keeping the Celeste in check, and they're just going to push on through to this turret. Glaive is going to make his way back, does have boots if he needs it to defend this one, but isn't going to pop them just yet. Might use them as an escape route and trying his best to clear these minions right now, working on damaging Pain Sandy, but that's not really the target you want when So Bad Very Bad is still up and raining down with the Heliogenesis. Luckily did manage to save the turret, however, so that's going to be very good for the side of Brenchon's, because right now the teams are both even with turrets. They're fairly even in gold. Brenchon sitting at 24.1k. Meanwhile, it's the side of Silver Boon at 26.2. So they're slightly ahead, as well as being 1 kill ahead. But I wouldn't, you said it will be down to the next fight that breaks out. And I really do believe that the next kind of ace we see, or at least the next 2-member kind of dying over, it will really change the way, or I guess continue it for the side of Silver Boom, who have shown more aggression and control over these fights, but whether Brenchong can kind of turn that one around.
Well, yeah, but there is one thing that we must note is that because of how cheap Adagio's build is, if the side of Brenchong do turtle up, and then this allow Adagio to make full use of how cheap his kit is, or rather his items are, then they could have a chance at winning in the late game, only because of how it's going to work, yeah? Because gold advantage in a later game when everyone has got full items, even if you have a 10k lead over your enemies, it would not matter at all because everyone's at full item.
And we see a bit of poke coming down onto Ma Xin, who's taking a fair bit of damage, is going to use that Imperial Sigil early. And look at the damage, just the heal being negated by the Celeste. So bad, very bad, able to land those Heliogenesis. And they're surely going to take this turret now. And it would be a good time for the side of Silver Boom to engage. There's going to be the Verse of Judgment, since he wasn't going to jump onto Lei Kang. Lei Kang needs some form of heal right now because he's just caught between all kinds of bad. And it's actually looking like Brenchons might have this fight, especially with So Bad Very Bad being low on energy right now, and is soon going to be low on health, as since he wasn't going to be able to clean that up with the help of Mr. Jim and Ma Xin, and they're able to turn that one around. And this is why I said they don't need the ace completely. Ace would be obviously preferable, but they're able to get the 2 carries, the carry and the jungler, of the side of Silver Boom, and they're able to take an objective from him. Probably going to turn away from this to take the gold mine as well if they want to increase their lead, but they might just play this one safe and back, which looks like it's going to be the decision, because Silver Boom not too far away, and actually managed to stun out Cincy 1, who's not going to be in too much trouble, as he does have an easy route out of there and manages me up with his team. But now Silver Boom being quick about this decision, and they decide to go for that gold mine, which I think that's definitely the right choice there by Silver Boom, to turn onto that real quickly, knowing they have the damage capabilities to do it and not wanting to give it over to the side of Brenchons.
Well, yeah, definitely. I must agree with you. I mean, it is just down to Silver Boom, and I personally think that Lei Kang is generally Silver Boom's Team Silver Boom's shout caller, because whenever Lei Kang kind of starts playing, it's as if they receive a revival of some sort. They kind of start playing more cohesively. They know their macros plays. They know what they need to do. They know what they want to do. So it is just down to how the side of Brenchong is going to execute this team comp, because they have the damage. In the late game, when both Sync 1 and Mr. Jim on their carry roles get up all their items. Ooh.
But we see Mr. Jim going in with Afterburn is countered out by the, I guess, Adagio there, as well as the Catherine able to lock him down, and that fire is going to go very quickly in favor of Silver Boom, as their support does get taken out by that Solar Storm. It's now 6-6, and still such an even game, but it's just about timing on these fights, because right now we see Silver Boom ahead, able to turn their attention to Kraken. So I think being able to win that fight, but not winning the one before, it really is just about the timing on these fights, because it's so even between the two teams. Since he won't gonna be able to gonna try dive in actually on So Bad Very Bad, gonna be followed up by the Glaive. It's gonna be the renewal, but they're able to get the kill anyway. But since he won, my fault of his Catherine, he is low, is going to try Galvin. Doesn't have the Rose offensive, however. Mr. Jim probably could have gone down there. And that's going to be the Blast Tremor to pick up the final kill. Mr. Jim, I would have gone down as Mr. Jim on that Glaive to save since he won, but it looks like they had a bit of trouble of their own facing off with Lei Qiang. And, it's good to see this Adagio being put to work and effective use in this match, because definitely compared to the pedal pickup before, it's a bit of a change. We see the Atlas going off there. Actually, not going to be able to do too much to Lei Qiang, as he's still able to push Margin off, and there's the Solar Storm coming through just to help clear out that turret if anything, and Kraken's going to make his way on through. They're not going to push for any further. I think Silver Boom, realizing how close this match is at the moment, they really don't want to give up anything, and they're going to play a bit more safe.
But I mean, Adagio has to, because Adagio is now sitting on a coat of plates. Oh, what happened? Okay, so Adagio,
I was gonna say no one looked AFK.
Okay, so Adagio just picked up a metal jacket, and that is when Adagio is full build already, right? So as long as the side of Brenchong can turtle up, farm up, get full build as well, then the side then Adagio will start not doing any more damage, because that is where his power peak is. It is like similar to that of Vox. Once Vox reaches full damage and full build, there is really nothing more he can do, and all you can do is now just counter his full build.
Yep, and we see So Bad Very Bad being the target here by Mr. Jim, as he is able to find the kill. Meanwhile, Sin C1 making their way onto Lei Qiang. Very good targeting from the side of Brenchong, and they're going to be able to chase down Pain Sandy on this Catherine. And I don't think there's any escape as the Afterburn hits them into the wall. Massive damage, and there's the ace. And Brenchong's just going for the turret. I mean, Kraken isn't up now, it's still down. And they're not going to have the minions there, but I think they have enough damage between them. They should be able to get this turret. However, if they can get more, I'm not too sure, as So Bad Very Bad is up in another few seconds. But it's going to be Mr. Jim making his way onto the turret. He does have the Afterburn to get out of that situation, so he knows that he's going to use it, and he's out there safely. A very good trade in there, I guess, getting objectives afterwards.
Oh, the Brent corner. Oh, this is
even waiting up behind the crystal set. No way. They're going in with the arcane passage, and do they have the damage to do this before the enemy team gets back? They realize it now, but they're going to be back in time. There's the turret gone, and they're onto the crystal. There's no way they can stop this. There's going to be the Blast Tremor to try, but it's not going to be enough, as Mr. Jim has the damage to finish out the crystal. They're going to find the Lyra, but the damage dealers of Brenchong's meanwhile on the back line, and what looked like it could have been a Silver Boom game, pushing it to the third match, is not going to end that way, as Brenchong's making the base rush, and just that was crazy. I think, you should always expect that. I'm surprised there was no vision on the side of the base when they went through that. You can see Pain Sandy going for items like the Clockwork and Echo, where maybe having a contraption would have helped in that sense, or just have some scout traps along the base edge, because that was so predictable. Whether
that was so
you said it. You're like the Brent corner, and then it's just over in seconds. But GG, well played to those guys.
I didn't think it was that soon, but whatever it takes to win the game, whether or not you go for team fight. I mean, if you cannot win team fights, then you generally just backdoor if you can backdoor. So anyways, GG to Silverboom and Brenchong. Both of you played impressive. I mean, Lei Keng, I must commend you on that adagio of yours. You are starting to lose damage. I mean, the adagio starts to lose damage in the later part of the game. And of course, I must commend the side of Brenchong when they knew which target they want to go after. They want so bad, very bad, so bad, very bad. So they took her down first and then after to focus on Lei Keng. They understand that Lei Keng really do not have the damage in the later game and he didn't pose as a threat, as much a threat as